Hey everybody, DM Galabond here, and this week on Monster Monday, we have a very special presentation. Tonight, we are taking a break from looking at the monsters from Call of the Netherdeep to answer a viewer request. A few days ago, I got a viewer request on one of my videos, and it's somebody that is out there called Tryhard. Thank you very much, Tryhard, for writing in and leaving a comment. Tryhard wrote in with this question: could you do the Otyugh on Monster Monday? My players were attacked by a starving adolescent Otyugh, and one of them may have rolled a nat 20 in animal handling, then proceeded to feed it a dark mantle and tame it. So it would be nice to know some more about it. Well, yes, it would be nice to know more about the Otyugh and specifically more about the animal handling, and I'm going to get to that a little bit later. So tonight, we're going to go into the Wayback Machine and look at the history of the Otyughs throughout the editions of D&D and how we can mine that history to create some new 5e variants. We're also going to find some ways that our viewer Tryhard could possibly manipulate what's going on in the party with this new pet that they have discovered. Okay, just for you, Tryhard, we're also going to pull back the curtain and see why sometimes the rule of cool that you let your players get away with can bite the party in the butt, and how you as the DM can have loads of fun behind the DM screen with this wonderful new toy that they have let you play with. Oh, they think it's their pet, but no, you get to control it. The possibilities are endless. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at Otyughs. We are going to start with the history of the monster and its origins in D&D. Now, Otyughs were first introduced in AD&D or First Edition. There were two versions of the monster in that edition, the standard Otyugh and the Neo-Otyugh. And here's a little bit of the way they were described in that edition. The Otyugh is a medium monster, ranges between 4 and 5 feet in diameter and about 3 feet tall. The Otyugh has a sensory organ stalk and 2 tentacle arms which protrude from its hideous body. The eyes are always thrust above the offal the creature lays under, and this prevents surprise. Its tentacles have sharp ridges and are used to deliver smashing blows to prey. The creature's mouth is sucker-like and filled with many teeth. If it bites any victim, it is 90% likely to be infected by disease, typhus. Neo-Otyughs are the larger, more intelligent species of Otyugh. They conform to the general characteristics of Otyugh and are even more aggressive in their hunting of prey. Also, the Neo-Otyugh are slightly better at telepathic communication. Some species of these creatures reach 8 feet in diameter and a height of 3 feet or more. The hide of a Neo-Otyugh is even tougher than that of an Otyugh, although the appearance is similar. That is the way Otyughs and their cousins, the Neo-Otyughs, first came onto the scene. And we only have the one image of Otyughs from AD&D, which is this one here. They only gave us the Otyugh as an image. They did not give us a separate image of the Neo-Otyugh. When we moved to 2nd edition D&D, we also had the standard Otyugh and the Neo-Otyugh as monsters. Otyughs, also known as the Gulguthydra, are terrifying creatures that lurk in heaps of dung and decay, waiting for something to disturb it. There are two varieties, the regular Otyugh and its larger, more intelligent offshoot, the Neo-Otyugh. They feed on dung and waste from other dungeon creatures. Gulguthydra means dung eaters, but they also enjoy an occasional snack of fresh meat. Ah, fresh meat. Otyughs have huge bloated bodies covered with rock-like skin that is brownish-gray in color, which is in turn covered with dung. They stand on 3 thick legs that give them slow ground movement but enable them to pivot quickly. They have 3 eyes on a leaf-like stalk that moves quickly from side to side, enabling them to scan a large area. The eye stalk is also a receiver-transmitter for their telepathic abilities. Otyughs have a huge mouth with very sharp teeth in the center of their mass. They also have 2 tentacles with leaf-like ridges that they use to smash and grapple their opponents. The tentacles are covered with rough thorn-like projections. Now, Neo-Otyughs have smaller mouths than Otyughs. But Otyughs and Neo-Otyughs speak their own language, much of which is nonverbal, so movement of eye stalk and tentacles or emission of certain smells. They also have limited telepathy that enable them to communicate with other creatures. Otyughs reek of dung and decay. Now when we move to 3rd edition, we have only the baseline Otyugh, but 3rd edition game designers gave us a couple of new variations. And it's these new variations from 3rd edition that we are going to call back to when we create our homebrew versions for 5e. In 3rd edition, the 2 new types of Otyughs are called the Gulguthydra and the Lifeleech Otyugh. So let's go through all 3 versions that they gave us in 3rd edition. So the normal Otyugh looks like a bloated ovoid covered with a rock-like skin. A vine-like stalk about 2 feet long rises from the top of the disgusting body and bears the 2 eyes. Its mouth, little more than a wide gash filled with razor-sharp teeth, is in the center of the mass. The creature shuffles about on 3 thick, sturdy legs and has 2 long tentacles covered in rough, thorny protrusions. The tentacles end in leaf-like appendages covered in more thorny growths. A typical Otyugh has a body 8 feet in diameter and weighs about 500 pounds. A Gulguthydra is 6,000 pounds of ravenous hunger for anything organic, including plants and trees, as well as halflings and humans. Each of the creature's 6 heads has a mouth full of sword-sized teeth, whirling on Hydra-style neck, able to reach targets up to 20 feet off the ground. A Gulguthydra moving through a forest grabs mobile prey with its 2 Otyugh-style tentacles while chomping on trees and bushes with its 6 mouths, leaving a clear-cut trail of destruction in its wake. The creature prefers soft organic matter such as meat to hard organic matter such as trees. A foot-thick layer of greasy slime and excrement coats the Gulguthydra and the ground beneath it. When a Gulguthydra moves, it slides along a cushion of its own hideous slime. And the Lifeleech Otyugh looks like a bloated ovoid supported by 3 stocky legs. A vine-like eye stalk rises about 2 feet above its bloated body, and 4 thick tentacles extend from its sides. The creature's horrid mouth extends around the entire front half of its body and holds multiple rows of jagged teeth. The creature's rough hide twists and contorts over its strange form, seemingly infused with a horrid energy of its own. In 4th edition, we only had 1 Otyugh, and that was the garden variety Otyugh. The Otyugh really didn't get much attention in that edition, and the only description we get of it is that it is a tentacled scavenger that feeds on carrion and lurks under mounds of filth and refuse. After all of the imaginative stuff that we got about Otyughs in the earlier editions, in 4th edition it kind of feels like they dropped the ball. But in 5th edition, we're back to the 2 classic variants, although there's a nasty twist on this monster that will feature in our 3rd Fun with Otyugh Pets option later in the show. An Otyugh is a grotesque, bulbous creature borne along on 3 sturdy legs, its eyes and nose set along a vine-like stalk that snakes from the top of its bloated body. 2 rubbery tentacles end in spiky leaf-like appendages that the Otyugh uses to shovel food into its gaping maw. And a Neo-Otyugh is a stronger, more intelligent version of an Otyugh, a grotesque aberration sporting 3 legs, snake-like tentacles, and a perpetually ravenous maw. That's an overview of the way the Otyughs are described through the editions. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the environment because there's less variation with the environment. You can find these in a lot of places, but they have remained relatively the same throughout the editions. So, Otyughs have always fulfilled a similar role in every edition of D&D, that of a living garbage disposal. In early AD&D modules, these monsters were often located in the areas of dungeons near where intelligent creatures had their kitchens and or their outhouse facilities. All of the waste of these monster groups, from their leftover foodstuffs to their bodily excrement and their dead comrades and enemies, would be thrown in a pit with an Otyugh and would eventually be devoured. Often there were traps with chutes that would deposit unlucky adventurers in this pit with the Otyugh, so that the unlucky party or PC had to battle an Otyugh as well as the overwhelming stench of the monster dump. Now, in the wild, the Otyughs often appear in areas of decay, such as swamps or bogs. They can also be found in the Underdark in natural depressions where dead creatures and dead vegetable matter naturally collect through the actions of gravity and flowing water. And Otyughs are hazards in the underbellies of urban areas as well. Now, nobody has ever successfully completed a census of Otyughs in the sewers of Waterdeep, for instance. Partial counts have been completed, but eventually the census taker just never comes back from an excursion. And it's always unclear whether they fell prey to an Otyugh or to some nefarious criminal syndicate that thought someone was snooping around a little too close to an area that they shouldn't be. In any event, it's a fair bet that one or more of the counted or uncounted Otyughs in the city got a really good meal out of the effort of the census takers. Now I want to go and take a look at the lore about the Otyughs. And in looking and examining this lore, we're going to get some ideas of how we can use them. And again, we're going to go back to first edition and we're going to work our way through to see what we can find out about these monsters throughout the editions. From AD&D, we learn about Otyughs. These weird monsters are omnivorous scavengers, not at all hesitant about adding a bit of fresh meat to their diet of dung, offal, and carrion. They hate direct sunlight or bright light, so they are found underground in most cases. Usually, 90% of the time, only a single individual is encountered, for Otyugh typically live in partnership with other subterranean monsters. The Otyugh will dwell in a true state with other powerful monsters in order to scavenge droppings and other leavings. In most cases, Otyugh live in piles of dung and rubbish and thrive there. Now, remember in 2nd edition, they classified the Otyughs as Gulguthra. And in that edition, we learn all Gulguthra have limited telepathic ability. An Otyugh can communicate with creatures up to 40 feet away, while a Neo-Otyugh can communicate with creatures as distant as 60 feet. Communication is usually limited to simple feelings and emotions such as hunger, temperature conditions, and associated discomforts, its dislike of bright lights, and imminent death for its prey. Gulguthra also have infravision with a 90-foot range. And then in 3rd edition, we learn some more interesting facts about each of the 3 Otyugh varieties that they showed us there. So in 3rd edition, a normal Otyugh spends most of its time within its lair, which it keeps filled with carrion, offal, and all manner of similar trash. An Otyugh usually covers itself with this vile stuff, leaving only its sensory stalk exposed. The stack also carries the Otyugh's olfactory organ, and lies there for hours shuffling food into its mouth. Intelligent subterranean beings sometimes coexist with Otyughs, which they regard as convenient garbage disposals. They dump their refuse in the lair of the Otyugh, which generally refrains from attacking them. Otyughs in 3rd edition speak common. Now, about the Gulguthydra, we learn this bit of lore. The Gulguthydra is a hybrid of the predatory hydra and the scavenging Otyugh. It's known for its teeth, its appetite, and its sickening stench. Any corporeal being with 8 or fewer hit dice who comes within 80 feet of a Gulguthydra must make a Fortitude saving throw, DC 23, or be nauseated for the next 1d10 rounds. At the end of the period of nausea, if still within 80 feet of the Gulguthydra, the being must make another save. Now, a single successful save exempts the being from needing to make saves against any Gulguthydra's nauseating stench ability for 1 full day. Nauseated beings are unable to attack, cast spells, concentrate on spells, or do anything else requiring attention. The only action a nauseated character can take is a single move or move equivalent action. Then we learn this about the Lifeleech Otyugh. Like the more common Otyugh, the Lifeleech Otyugh is a grotesque subterranean monster that lurks within heaps of refuse. Warped by arcane magic to thwart the healing power of divine spellcasters, a Lifeleech Otyugh feeds on the energy of nearby healing spells. Whenever a spell or spell-like ability with the healing descriptor is used on a creature within 60 feet of a Lifeleech Otyugh, the Otyugh gains the benefit of the healing spell as if it had been one of the spell's targets. If a healing spell cast within 60 feet of a Lifeleech Otyugh would grant it enough hit points to exceed its full normal total, it gains the remaining hit points as temporary hit points. So a Lifeleech Otyugh can't have more temporary hit points from its Lifeleech aura than its full normal hit point total. So that means that it can have double its normal hit points, all of its normal hit points, and then an equal number of temporary hit points on top of that. So this ability affects spell completion and spell trigger items such as scrolls, staffs, and wands, but not other magic items. In other words, if you have cure wounds in a staff or something, and you cast cure wounds from the staff, the Otyugh will gain the benefit of that. However, if you have a healing potion and you drink the potion, the Lifeleech Otyugh will not gain the benefit of that. So that's the distinction that they're trying to make there. They do a very roundabout way of describing it, but that is what they mean. In 4th edition, we learned this about Otyughs. Some intelligent monsters capture Otyughs and use them as guardians, but Otyughs are best used as living garbage disposals. Otyughs often infest the sewer systems of large cities, lurking in the darkest and most stagnant portions. Otyughs usually attack creatures that wander too near their filthy larders, even if they're not particularly hungry. They rarely devour the carcasses of slain creatures immediately, preferring to let them rot first. Ew. And in 5th edition, we learn this. An Otyugh buries itself under mounds of offal and carrion, leaving only its sensory stalk exposed. When an edible creature happens by, the Otyugh's tentacles erupt from the filth and grab hold of it. Otyughs make the most of any opportunity to ambush and devour prey. They use a limited form of telepathy to urge sentient creatures toward their lairs, sometimes pretending to be something else. Now, like an Otyugh, a Neo-Otyugh buries itself under mounds of offal and carrion to ambush prey. Their improved intellect and innate spellcasting makes them especially effective against humanoid targets, as they use their powers of control to split off a straggler from a party, then attack. All Otyughs tolerate bright light only when considerable stores of carrion or garbage lie within reach. In the wilderness, they dwell in stagnant swamps, scum-filled ponds, and damp forest dells. The scent of graveyards, city sewers, village middens, and manure-filled animal pens attracts them to civilized areas. Since all Otyughs lack concern for anything but food, their nests sometimes accumulate a variety of treasures shed from their victims and mixed among the junk. sentient subterranean beings can coexist with both types of Otyughs, employing them as garbage disposals. With such plentiful sustenance, Otyughs grow fat in their wallows, unmoved by other drive or desire. This sedentary gluttony makes them reliable guardians. Now, as long as it's fed, an Otyugh or Neo-Otyugh refrains from attacking other creatures. However, would-be Otyugh masters can easily underestimate the quantity of waste, carrion, and meat necessary to keep an Otyugh from wandering off in search of food. More than one trained Otyugh or Neo-Otyugh has eaten its keeper after devouring all the waste in its wallow. So, try hard. Are you starting to get some ideas here? Well, we're going to go ahead and explore some more ideas in depth a little bit later on. But now, what we want to do, of course, is look at the creature type of the Otyugh. And the creature type in 5th edition is an aberration. Aberrations are utterly alien beings. Many of them have innate magical abilities drawn from the creature's alien mind rather than the mystical forces of the world. The quintessential aberrations are Aboleths, Beholders, Mind Flayers, and Slotty. And of course, we can add the Otyugh to that list. Now, I want to circle back to something that Tryhard said in the note that kicked off this entire episode. You remember Tryhard said one of their players got a nat 20 on an animal handling check, and I mentioned something about the rule of cool. So there's a reason for that, and that is that aberrations cannot be targets for animal handling when we look at the rule as written. And here is exactly what the rule on animal handling says. Animal handling, quote, when there is any question whether you can calm down a domesticated animal, keep a mount from getting spooked, or intuit an animal's intentions, the DM might call for a wisdom animal handling check. You also make a wisdom animal handling check to control your mount when you attempt a risky maneuver. Here's why I say that the situation that happened at Tryhard's table falls into the rule of cool and doesn't actually conform to the rules for animal handling. And that is because the Otyugh is neither an animal nor is it domesticated. Now, it's an aberration, which means that it doesn't really qualify to be affected by the animal handling skill. But it's not wrong for Tryhard to allow that to happen because in the moment, if that's a really cool thing and the parties come up with a really clever way of trying to get around that obstacle, then yes, you definitely should follow the mantra of improv and say yes and just roll with it because that's rule of cool and it's an interesting story. Everybody who's in that game will remember that for years. So better to go with it in the moment and then figure out how you want to deal with it later than to be the buzzkill DM that wants to too strictly adhere to the rules as written. If we go back and look at the animal handling, it's talking about animals. You can read that as the beast creature type. And it also talks about mounts. Now, in D&D 5e, there are a few creatures that are specifically referred to as mounts in the description of the creature that are not beasts. And I'm thinking mainly the two probably most popular out of those would be things like the griffin, which is a monstrosity, and the wyvern, which is classified as a dragon. And so those monsters are actually not beasts. They are mounts, so you could use animal handling on them. But I'm drawing a blank on any creatures that qualify or are described as mounts that are actually aberrations. So that's why I'm saying that normally this rule wouldn't apply to them. As I see it, you can go ahead, try hard, and in the aftermath of this, you can deal with the consequences in one of three ways. You can make the consequences of the party getting a pet Otyugh be humorous consequences. They could be terrifying consequences, or they could be campaign changing consequences. And as we break down each of the variants, the ones that exist, and then the ones that I have created based on some of those third edition monsters, I'll go through how you might do that for each one. And then there's a bonus option because the Otyugh makes a surprising appearance in the description of another monster that otherwise doesn't seem to be related at all. And we will look at that one as well. The standard Otyugh. Here we have the stat block. It's a monster that is good for a level 3 party, which is in your tier 1. It's a large apparition with a neutral alignment, armor class 14, 12d10 plus 48 hit points, speed of 30 feet, a pretty vanilla stat block. Probably Constitution is its high score, and then its dump stats are its intelligence and its charisma. It gets the bonus on saving throws to Constitution, and it has 120 feet of dark vision. It speaks Otyugh, and it has that limited telepathy, which allows it to magically transmit simple messages and images to any creature within 120 feet that can understand the language, but it doesn't allow the receiving creature to telepathically respond. Then when it gets in combat, it has multi-attack with 3 attacks, 1 with the bite and 2 with the tentacles. So the bite is +6, reach 5 feet, 2d8 plus 3 piercing damage. The target is a creature. It must succeed on a DC 15 Constitution save against disease or become poisoned until the disease is cured. Every 24 hours that elapse, the target must repeat the saving throw, reducing its hit point maximum by 5 on a failure. Disease is cured on a success. Target dies if the creature reduces its hit points maximum to 0. This reduction in a target hit point maximum lasts until the disease is cured. This is a monster that can, for a low-level party that are way out in the wilderness and don't have access to high enough level magic, this can actually kill the party if somebody keeps failing those Constitution saving throws. Right, so then the tentacle attack is a +6 to hit, reach of 10 feet, 1d8 plus 3 bludgeoning damage, and 1d8 piercing damage. If the target is medium or smaller, it's grappled, escape DC 13, and restrained until the grapple ends. The Otyugh has 2 tentacles, each of which can grapple 1 target. And then it does its tentacle slam. So it slams creatures that are grappled by it into each other or a solid surface. Each creature must succeed on a DC 14 Constitution saving throw or take 2d6 plus 3 bludgeoning damage and be stunned until the end of the Otyugh's next turn. On a successful save, the target takes half the bludgeoning damage and isn't stunned. Yes, it grabs Fred the Fighter and Bob the Barbarian, and if they can't get out, it just smacks them together like, kids smacking erasers together for the teacher in detention after school. That is what the tentacle slam is all about. Now let's take a look and see how that would work into the tactics of your Otyugh. So before battle, the Otyugh will use its telepathy to lure adventurers closer. In the wild, the Otyugh might send telepathic thoughts of sweet fruits that it sometimes notices, realizing that adventurers usually have a sweet tooth. In a dungeon or sewer environment, it might send thoughts of something gold and shiny that it spat out after eating a recent victim. Now, depending on how clever you want to make your Otyugh, this shiny thing might be strategically placed so that anyone stooping to pick it up is in easy reach of the mouth and the tentacles. Of course, if the Otyugh gets 1 or more PCs grappled, tentacle slam should be used every round. Smack grapple creatures into each other or smack grapple creatures into other PCs that are trying to attack the Otyugh. Now, if the party is fighting in melee in a pile of rotting, slimy garbage, You might make anyone hit by a grappled character succeed on a DC 14 dexterity saving throw to avoid being knocked prone. And maybe if that garbage pile is really slimy, they have to make that dexterity saving throw at disadvantage. And don't forget to bite to spread that lovely disease condition and taste the juicy, sweet blood of live victims. Getting back to try hard, what are some consequences of having an Otyugh as a pet? Well, there's some humorous consequences. Let the Otyugh become a real pet for the party. Let it go on adventures and eat the spoils of battle. Of course, it will prefer that you have a place and a way to let those spoils rot for a bit so they get nice and rank and tasty. And if you don't feed your pet Otyugh enough dead and rotting things, it may get a little frisky during playtime and grapple or bite a party member because it's hungry. Now, a terrifying way that you could have the Otyugh pet play out: the bigger it gets, the hungrier it becomes. Eventually, your party can't produce enough waste, even with the corpses of your fallen foes, and the Otyugh wanders away or it turns on you. Now, just imagine you're in your stronghold. The city guard comes around and is asking questions. Well, guard captain, what seems to be the problem? Well, you know, there's some kids missing from the orphanage a few blocks over, and now there's a bad smell in the area. Have you all seen anything strange? And party's like, oh crap. So that could be a both a terrifying and a humorous consequence of keeping a pet Otyugh, and maybe not having enough food to keep it satisfied as it grows bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Now let's take a look at the Neo-Otyugh. We'll start with the stat block. This is a monster that's good for a tier 2 party at level 5. It's a huge aberration, and again, it has a neutral alignment. Armor class 16. Now the hit points are 12d12 plus 72, speed of 30 feet. And again, stat block, everything is elevated a little bit. Intelligence, it's quite a bit more intelligent. Charisma still is the dump stat. Now, has a constitution bonus, so constitution of +9 on the saving throw, and it's immune to being poisoned. Has dark vision out to 120 feet and speaks Otyugh, as well as having its limited telepathy. And again, that is a range of 120 feet. But now, revealing part of its aberrant nature, the Neo-Otyugh gains spellcasting, and it's a psionic-powered spellcasting. Its innate spellcasting ability is intelligence, spell save DC of 12. It can innately cast the following spells requiring no components. At will, detect thoughts. Once per day, it can use command or hold person. So then in combat, a multi-attack, it again has the 3 attacks, 1 bite, and 2 tentacles. This time, the bite is +8 to hit, 2d10 plus 5 piercing, and all of the same goes for the Constitution. Well, I guess actually the Constitution check is now DC 17, but you have to worry about that disease. Tentacles are +8 to hit, reach of 15, and hit is 1d10 plus 5 bludgeoning damage. And now this time it doesn't get any additional piercing damage. And then it has the Tentacle Slam, which slams creatures grappled together, and it's a DC 16 Constitution saving throw, or take 3d6 plus 5 bludgeoning damage and be stunned until the end of the Neo-Otyugh's next turn. Very similar, but only a little bit bigger, a little bit beefier, and having those innate spellcasting abilities. But now let's take a look at how that would play out with the tactics of the Neo-Otyugh. So before battle, the Neo-Otyugh will use its detect thoughts ability to scan the adventurers. When it finds someone thinking about treasure or thinking about hunger, it will telepathically try to separate that one from the rest of its party by sending images that appeal to its greed or to its need of filling its belly. So the more clever Neo-Otyughs will almost certainly have some treasure they've discovered is good to bait and lure adventurers. When an adventurer gets close, it will use either its command or its whole person innate spellcasting to get that adventurer to come fetch the treasure or to stand still while it gets grappled. Of course, if the Neo-Otyugh is in combat and gets one or more PCs grappled, we're back to our tentacle slams. Smack the creatures into each other or try to smack down other people, especially those people that are trying to be up close fighting in melee. And now, because it's a little bit stronger, the dexterity save DC to avoid being knocked down is DC 16 instead of DC 14. Try hard. You were talking about this pet that you came across as an Otyugh. I don't know whether you really are set on it being an actual Otyugh or if you want to let it be a Neo-Otyugh. If you decide, well, maybe this was actually a juvenile Neo-Otyugh, here's a couple of consequences that you can give your players for picking up such a pet. So, a humorous consequence might be to let the Neo-Otyugh become a real pet for the party, let it go on adventures, and use its innate casting to help the party in battle. Now, keep some chest of preserving around and fill them with rotting meat and rotting vegetables to act as kibble snacks for the Neo-Otyugh, and then let it dine on the corpses of your vanquished foes as a special treat. Of course, while you're out adventuring, if it gets a whiff of a midden heap somewhere, you might have a hard time convincing the Neo-Otyugh to keep going and not stop for a nice, long, relaxing wallow and searching out the choicest rotten morsels deep down in the heart of the rotting pile. A terrifying consequence of having the Neo-Otyugh is just like the one before. Bigger it gets, hungrier it becomes. Eventually, you can't keep it fed. It might turn on you, or it might wander away. And yes, you might still get that knock on the door of your stronghold from the city guard captain asking if you've seen anything strange because children are missing from the orphanage down the block. And the place is smelling awful. That is another possibility there. I have created a 5th edition version of the Lifeleech Otyugh as a tier 3 monster. And I think it's good to look at the stat block of the monster out of 3rd edition just to sort of see how it was imagined. Now, in that edition, it was imagined as a CR8 monster and hit dice 9d8 plus 54. Initiative is +3, speed of 40 feet, climb of 20 feet, armor class 21, base attack of +6, base grapple of +18. The attack with the tentacles is +14 melee attack with 1d8 +8 damage. Its full attack is 4 tentacles and 1 bite, so 5 attacks per round. The space and reach is 10 feet and 10-foot reach or up to 15-foot reach with the tentacles. Special attacks are Constrict and Improved Grab. Special qualities, Dark Vision 60 feet, Fast Healing 5, Lifeleech Aura, Spell Strengthened Hide, and Fortitude +9, Reflex +6, Will +12. And the ability scores, well, look at that stat block. Strength 27, Constitution 23, Intelligence 7, Charisma 8. Skills, climb plus 16, hide plus 3, jump plus 12, listen plus 10, spot plus 10. Feats, alertness, combat reflexes, iron will, and weapon focused tentacle. So it's underground environment. Treasure is standard. Alignment usually neutral evil, and advancement. 10 to 12 hit dice for a large version, and 13 to 22 hit dice for a huge version. So this is what the monster was like in 3rd edition. But now thinking about making a tier 3 version of this for 5th edition, I have gone ahead and created a stat block with a nifty tool that I found online where it actually lets me make stat blocks that look like stat blocks. Yay! So we're using some stats straight out of the 3rd edition monster, and we are updating other stats for 5th edition based on the toughness of the other 2 Otyughs that we already have. So the armor class is 21. Hit points is 225, which is 18d12 plus 108. It's got a speed of 40 feet, climb of 20 feet. And the stat block, well, that comes right out of the 3rd edition monster. So saving throws, strength plus 13, con plus 11, skills, stealth plus 8. Senses are dark vision, 120 feet, tremor sense 60 feet, passive perception 14. Speaks Otyugh, and it's a CR 16 monster. So it has the limited telepathy of the 5th edition monsters. Then it has the Lifeleech aura. And I've changed Lifeleech aura a little bit to make this an even more terrifying monster and worthy of being an opponent for a tier 3 party. So in 5th edition, in my homebrew version, whenever a spell or spell-like ability with the healing descriptor is used on a creature within 60 feet of it, the Lifeleech Otyugh becomes the spell's first target and gains the benefit of the healing spell. If the spell targets a specific number of creatures, the creature closest to the Lifeleech Otyugh fails to gain the benefit of the spell. If a healing spell cast within 60 feet of Lifeleech Otyugh would grant it enough hit points to exceed its full normal total, it gains the remaining hit points as temporary hit points. So a Lifeleech Otyugh can't have more temporary hit points from its Lifeleech aura than its full normal hit point total. Temporary hit points gained in this manner last for 1 hour. This ability affects spell completion and spell trigger items such as scrolls, staff, and wands, but not other magic items. So again, doesn't affect potions. It has 5 attacks per round, one with its bite and 4 with each of its tentacles. The bite is plus 13 to hit, reach 5 feet, 1 target, and 2d8 plus 8 piercing damage if the target is a creature, must succeed on a DC 19 Constitution save, or it has that disease. And because this is a tier 3 monster, instead of reducing the hit point maximum by 1d10 every day, now it's 2d10 every day on a failure. The tentacles are plus 13 to hit, reach of 15 feet, 1d8 plus 8 bludgeoning, and 1d8 piercing damage. So the target is large or smaller, it's grappled, escape DC 21, and restrained until the grapple ends. Now it still has the tentacle slam. This is a DC 21 to escape, and taking 2d6 plus 8 bludgeoning damage and being stunned if it fails that con save. And then notice I've given it the constrict, which is again from the 3rd edition. The Lifeleech Otyugh automatically deals tentacle damage with a successful grapple check. So as long as it is keeping a character grappled, then every round it's not only doing any damage that it might do from the slam, but it's also automatically doing the tentacle attack damage on top of that. So this is a monster that can get really nasty really fast. Keep in mind the change I've made to the Lifeleech aura ability. So that means if it's a single target spell, Cure Wounds, Healing Word, anything like that, and you cast it within 60 feet of the Otyugh, your intended target doesn't get the benefit of those hit points. You heal the Lifeleech Otyugh instead. So now you have this thing potentially beating up 5 of the members of your party at one time, and anybody firing off healing spells is actually healing the enemy, not healing your party members. So that is what makes this a really, really nasty monster that you can throw at your party in Tier 3. So now let's look at what tactics might be for this particular monster. So before the battle, the Lifeleech Otyugh will use its innate ability to detect anyone that wields divine magic, knowing instinctively that they could power its Lifeleech aura ability. That character becomes the primary target and the one that the Lifeleech Otyugh attempts to grapple and damage, but not kill just yet, so it can devour some of that delicious, savory, life-enhancing divine healing magic. Of course, if the Lifeleech Otyugh gets one or more PCs grappled, constrictions and tentacle slams should be used every round. Smack grapple creatures into each other or smack grapple creatures into other PCs. Again, a dex save of DC 21 is what I'm suggesting to have people avoid getting knocked down when they're trying to fight on a pile of slippery and slick garbage and offal. And then revel in soaking up the healing spells. Let the cleric cure wounds on the fighter and see their eyes goggle when the fighter doesn't heal, but the Otyugh you are fighting seems to get better. And cackle from behind your DM screen when the fully healed Lifeleech swells in size with the temporary hit points it gains from the Paladin's Lay on Hands ability when she tries to get the wizard back into the fight, and the caster just continues to bleed out. Here are some consequences if my friend, if you have decided that after hearing about this, you really want that juvenile Otyugh your party found to instead be a juvenile Lifeleech Otyugh. So the party's stronghold is definitely going to need an alchemy lab to crank out healing potions. That also means that in combat, clerics, druids, and paladins can focus on dealing damage instead of healing it. Unless, of course, they want to save some slot to heal the party's pet. You could turn this ability of the Lifeleech Otyugh to your advantage. If your party knows what this thing is doing and they plan ahead and everybody just kind of has a bandolier with healing potions on, and part of what they do in combat is they just like pop healing potions, then you can have your enemies try to heal their own allies. And instead of healing their own allies, they'll be healing your pet. And then that just makes your pet stronger, and your pet can just go keep rampaging on your enemies. So that could be kind of a humorous way of handling the consequences of having a Lifeleech Otyugh as a pet. But the terrifying side of this is almost certainly the Lifeleech Otyugh will turn on the party at some time. Now, if you decide that you found the juvenile Lifeleech Otyugh, whose extra tentacles and Lifeleech aura haven't kicked in yet, as it grows, maybe the party will realize only too late, perhaps in the middle of another combat, that this pet has gone rogue and is going to attack everything in its path, especially with all these juicy healing spells it's soaking up from the party's cleric. Turn what appears to be a medium encounter into a deadly one by revealing the true nature of their pet at the worst possible time for the party. If you have a party of characters that seem to go through encounters too easily, If they seem to be really well organized and have a really good synergy between the players of all the abilities that each character has, you could throw them a serious curveball by dropping this into the middle of a combat and just sit back and watch the fun. See what happens when they realize, oh crap, healing spells aren't doing what we expect them. Instead, they're healing this thing and now it's attacking us too. So that is an option there. All right, and then for tier 4 in 5e, I propose the Gulguthydra. And again, we're going to look at the 3rd edition stat block as a way of getting started. So in 3rd edition, the Gulguthydra is a huge aberration, 15 d8 plus 105 hit points. It has a speed of 30 feet and a swim speed of 30 feet, armor class of 23. It attacks with 2 tentacles, plus 14 each attack, and 6 bites at plus 12 per attack. So each tentacle does 1d6 plus 5, each bite does 2d8 plus 2. And it takes up a 10 foot by 10 foot place and it can reach out to 15 feet. Has improved grab, nauseating stench, fortitude save plus 12, reflex save plus 5, will save plus 10. The ability scores are a little bit down from the Lifeleech Hydra that we just saw, but it has a listen of plus 6, spot of plus 7, and then the feats are Iron Will and multi attack. And it's found in forest, marsh, and underground, solitary, challenge rating of 12, usually neutral. And then for advancement, they suggest 16 to 30 hit dice for a huge version and 31 to 45 hit dice for a gargantuan version. So let's see what I did with that in 5th edition. Now, this is a monster that's designed to go against a level 18 party, tier 4, so that makes it a CR 21 enemy. The Gulguthydra is a gargantuan aberration, again with kind of a neutral alignment. Armor class of 23, but now it has 30 D20 plus 180 hit points. So this thing has nearly 500 hit points, so it's a huge bag of hit points. And it's something that your party can just beat on and beat on and beat on and beat on and hope that they can deal more damage than it can. And it's got the same stat block as the Lifeleech Hydra. Saving throws, strength plus 15, constitution plus 13, skills, stealth plus 10, dark vision out to 120 feet, tremor sense 60 feet, passive perception of 14. Again, of course, it speaks Otyugh and it has that limited telepathy, and it gains the nauseating stench. So any creature that comes within 80 feet of the Gulguthydra must make a Constitution saving throw DC 23 or be poisoned for 1 minute. At the end of that minute, if it's still within 80 feet of the Gulguthydra, the creature must make another save. Single successful save exempts the creature from needing to make saves against any Gulguthydra's nauseating stench ability for 1 day. This ability does not affect creatures that are immune to poison. The poison condition is an actual condition in 5th edition, so all of those extra tags and the extra verbiage that they had in 3rd edition really doesn't apply. So the nauseating stench kind of is a little bit watered down from what it did in 3rd edition, but that's because the poison condition already exists. So I'm just going with that and not trying to reinvent anything there. But as for its actions, it gets 8 attacks every round. 6 with its bite and 2 with its tentacles. So the bite is plus 12 to hit, reach of 20 feet, 1 target, 2d8 plus 8 piercing damage, and if it's a creature, it must succeed on a DC 19 Constitution saving throw against disease or become poisoned. And then again, just like the Lifeleech Hydra, if it fails that, then every 24 hours it loses 2d10 hit points. And the tentacle attack is plus 13 to hit, reach of 20 feet, and that deals 1d8 plus 8 bludgeoning damage plus 9 piercing damage. And if the target is huge or smaller, it's grappled with an escape DC of 21 and restrained until the grapple ends. And the Gulguthydra has 2 tentacles, each of which can grapple 1 target. And of course, I did not do the Tentacle Slam ability because I figure with 8 attacks every round, okay, that's just kind of starting to get silly, get overkill if you're letting it do all these other things. So I think the Gulguthydra with 8 attacks per round, that's enough. That's enough. And all that big, huge bag of hit points, it's going to be around for a while before your party burns it down with damage. Especially if anybody is dumb enough to try to wait up and fight it in melee. How does all this play into the tactics that the Gulguthydra is going to use? So, unlike the other Otyughs, this one don't stealth. Let the party hear it coming long before it arrives. There's 2 scenarios that I kind of have in mind, and they both are kind of in outdoor scenarios, but cast your mind back, if you will. In a wilderness setting, maybe it's like that scene from the original Jurassic Park movie when they're out sort of exploring the park, they've gotten out of the Jeep, they're walking around, and suddenly all the small dinosaurs are in a stampede panic because the predators are coming. And so maybe you're outside in a wilderness and all of these small animals just start coming out. Birds are flying and creatures like rabbits and snakes and rats and everything are just running. And then you're starting to hear further away the crashing of trees and everything that's coming in your direction. Oh boy. Something has spooked all the wildlife, and now you're right in its path. Now, the other scene is that scene in Phantom Menace when they're on the planet Naboo and all the jungle creatures are fleeing from the droid ships that are moving and slowly going through the jungle and just mowing down all the trees. That is the other that's the other scene that I kind of thought of. So when the Gulguthydra finally shows up in combat, use its 8 attacks to full effect. This is a dumb, ravenous creature, and each head is equally hungry, so let them all go after different targets. With a 20-foot reach of its bites and tentacles, the party hopefully will quickly learn to give it a wide berth. And if your barbarian just simply insists on going in for melee, make the player pay for that choice mercilessly. Oh, everybody else is standing back and, using range attacks. You're going right up into it. Hey, guess where all 6 of those heads are going to bite? They're going to bite the guy that's trying to cleave it with that great big axe. I really don't think that there's a way that Tryhard could sell his players on the fact that what they found was a baby Gulguthydra. But let's just say that you really wanted to do that. So there are no humorous consequences for having a Gulguthydra pet. The only options are terrifying and campaign changing. So nothing humorous. If the juvenile Otyugh your party found begins growing necks and secreting slime, it's going to start attacking anything that moves that gets within range, and they're just going to have to deal with that. Maybe they've already given it a name, but it don't care. It's just going to start biting the hand that feeds it, biting the arm connected to that hand, biting the torso connected to that arm, and then it belches out what it can't swallow. All right, then there's also potentially campaign changing consequences for having a Gulguthydra pet. Maybe the party has a nice spot in their stronghold to keep this juvenile Otyugh that really turns out to be a Gulguthydra. And they check on it once a week because it just always wallows underneath the awful in there. But one day, they find their pet is gone, and there's a trail of slime leading through the passage that goes to the sewers of the metropolis where they live. Where will the Gulguthydra go? What important NPC or NPCs will it eat? Will it disrupt a crime syndicate and get the party in hot water with them? Will it emerge in the catacombs under a holy shrine and eat some clergy and get the gods angry at the party? Will a member of the royal family or a scion of a noble house get eaten down by the pond and the party will have to go on the run from the law? All of those are possibilities if a Gulguthydra pet enters the game. All right, now that's one potential campaign changing consequence, but there is one more way that an Otyugh might intersect with a party in 5th edition. And try hard, I have a modest proposal for you. What if you want your party's pet Otyugh to really be an Otyugh, but not just an Otyugh? Might I suggest, consider that this pet they have found is actually a far realm parasite. What's a far realm parasite, you ask? A far realm parasite is a worm-like parasite that dwells in the torso of an eldritch lich, and it contains the lich's soul. When the lich dies, it implodes into the parasite, which vanishes to the far realm, only to return some days later. However, if the lich died in a magic circle cast to contain the undead, the lich doesn't come back as a lich. It comes back as an Otyugh that has all of the lich's memories. Now think about the possibilities of that in your campaign. You could flip the entire campaign on its head by having the pet slowly reveal all the knowledge accumulated over centuries or millennia as a lich. Maybe the Otyugh even begins to acquire more of the powers of the Eldritch Lich, and you can find out more about that creature in the Monstrous Compendium Volume 1, Spelljammer Creatures. So depending on the level of your party, they might become the pets of their Otyugh, who uses all the power of an Eldritch Lich from the far realms to make them do its bidding. Now here's some consequences for having a far realm parasite in the form of an Otyugh as a pet. Now you really can have some humorous consequences with this one. Maybe the parasite that used to be a lich has a twisted sense of humor. Maybe it knows that in a century or two it will accumulate enough power to reassume its original lich form. But for now, it's just going to hang out with these damned meddling kids and see what they get up to. Perhaps from time to time, if it learns about something in their path, it might even communicate the odd bit of lore about a magic item. Either one that they found, or one that it suggests they should go find. There's a terrifying way that a far realm parasite pet could impact your party. Maybe you decide that over time, the pet the party brought home regains all the powers of an eldritch lich, but retains its Otyugh form. Suddenly, the party might wake up one day in their stronghold to find the pet has taken over. By magic, by mental prowess, and by sheer intimidation, all the staff of the stronghold are now obedient thralls of the Otyugh, and the party may realize only too late that their Otyugh has a lot more spells, a lot more powerful attacks at its disposal that any of them are able to resist. And that could lead to a campaign-changing consequence. Okay, your party realizes. Now we're working for this Eldritch Lich. Forget our own plans. Forget our own hopes. Forget our own desires. This far realm Eldritch Lich is calling the shots, and it's making us offers we can't refuse. Where will it send the party? What goals does it have? What will a campaign of servitude to a lich from the far realms be like for your PCs and your party? Go ahead, try hard. Go nuts with it and find out. Have a little fun. This this is probably the best stealth way that you could make your players dread ever trying to make a pet out of any monster that they that they find. Let them realize, oh crap, we're a we're a level 2, level 3 party, and we just brought home a CR 15 lich. Oh boy, yeah, we're gonna be in trouble. So that could be like a real fun thing for you. And if your campaign is kind of going in a direction that you didn't anticipate, and maybe you're getting a little bit bored with what's happening and you want to just shake it up, go ahead and reveal that and then find out where that takes the game, because you throw a bit of chaos like that into the mix and who knows where your campaign is going to wind up. So that is just yet another way that this could play out. And I was a little bit surprised when I started looking through 5th edition that actually is part of the lore of this Eldritch Lich. But I'm really glad that I found it in there, because that gave me a whole new idea. Not a way of turning your not, of changing the physical form of this creature they found, but just changing the substance of what that really is. All right, everybody, finally, we have reached the end of this episode on Otyughs. If you've been watching this far, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Please, I want you to go ahead and subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video, and click the post notification bell so that you get notified every time new content drops. If you really like this episode, let me know in the comments. Also, thank Tryhard, because if it hadn't been for Tryhard suggesting this, I wouldn't have gotten around to the Otyugh this early. So, go ahead and let them know you appreciate it. I've been DM Gallipan. This has been Monster Monday. I have several campaigns that I run every week, and, well, I think at least one of them is going to happen this week. Our Sunday show is actually kind of on a season break. The Walker of Waterdeep is our Planeswalking 5th edition game. We're not having any live episodes now on Sundays, but you can go into the archives right here on the YouTube channel and look at all of the past episodes. We have 142 sessions that you can peruse that take the party all the way up through level 10. And normally, when we get back to playing that game, that will happen every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Then on Wednesday night this week, well, we were supposed to resume the Wednesday night game, but I live in Orlando, Florida. And if you've been paying any attention at all to the weather this weekend, you know that there is a storm called Ian that, at least as of the time of this recording, it looked like it was going to come straight into the Florida Peninsula right around Wednesday. So I have no idea if we will be having a game because I may not have power. So right now we're scheduled to have a game on Wednesday night, but Mother Nature is really going to kind of be the arbiter of whether we can have that game or not. Then on Saturday night at 7:30 p.m., we usually do our Saturday Night Greyhawk, and I think we are on for that game this coming Saturday. Again, depending on what happens with the storm, depending on if we lose power, and depending on how long we lose power, we may not be back to that game by Saturday. So, tentatively, it's scheduled, but I don't know. All of those live streams happen over on the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Galabond. All of the archives of all of those shows is right here on the YouTube channel. And we do have a Patreon at patreon.com/DMGalabond if you want to help us create more content. All right, next week we are going to get back to looking at the monsters from Critical Role called the Netherdeep, and we are going to be looking at the Scuttling Serpentmaw. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for watching. I've been DM Galabond, and remember, watch out for the monsters under the bed. Good night, everybody.